My wife's dad announced at New Year's dinner, "You're no longer family." One phone call turned the table. I am Marcus Morgan, 34 years old, and as I sat at that gleaming mahogany table surrounded by crystal champagne flutes and gold-rimmed china, I knew exactly what was coming. My father-in-law, William Hartfield, stood at the head of the table, his hand resting on a leather folder I recognized all too well. The folder that would change everything. "Marcus," William said, his voice cutting through the polite dinner conversation like a judge's gavel. "I think it's time we had an honest conversation about your place in this family. Before I tell you what was in that folder, and before I tell you about the phone call that would turn his smug announcement into the worst mistake of his life, I'd love to know where you're watching from tonight. Drop a comment below, and please hit like and subscribe if you believe that judging someone by their bank account instead of their character is a dangerous game to play." The dining room in the Hartfield mansion was suffocating. Not from heat. The climate control was set to a perfect 68 degrees, but from the weight of expectation, judgment, and barely concealed contempt. It was New Year's Eve, 2023, and this was supposed to be a celebration. The Hartfields always hosted an elaborate New Year's dinner. Politicians, business owners, country club friends, about 40 people total, all dressed in designer clothes, all speaking in that particular accent that comes from generations of private schools and European vacations. I sat next to my wife, Jennifer. She looked beautiful in her emerald dress, her blonde hair swept up in an elegant twist. But I could see the tension in her jaw, the way her fingers gripped her wine glass just a little too tightly. She knew something was wrong, too. Across from us sat Jennifer's brother, Christopher, wearing a Rolex that cost more than I used to make in a year. He was smirking, barely containing his excitement. Next to him was his wife, Vanessa, who looked at me the way someone might look at a stain on expensive upholstery. My father-in-law, William Hartfield, was a man who commanded attention simply by existing. At 62, he was tall, silver-haired, impeccably dressed in a custom suit. He had built Hartfield Properties into a real estate empire worth over $200 million. Hotels, commercial buildings, luxury condos. If it was expensive real estate in the tri-state area, William probably owned a piece of it. And he had never, not for one single day in the 5 years I'd been married to his daughter, let me forget that I wasn't good enough for her. "Marcus," William repeated, louder this time. The conversations around the table died. Everyone turned to look. "Stand up, please." Jennifer's hand found mine under the table. She squeezed it. A warning or support? I wasn't sure which. I stood up slowly. My suit was nice. Jennifer had bought it for me last month, but I knew everyone could tell it wasn't bespoke. It wasn't tailored on Savile Row. It was off the rack from Nordstrom, and in this room, that might as well have been from a thrift store. "I want to make an announcement," William said, opening the leather folder. "I've been thinking a lot about family lately, about legacy, about what it means to be a Hartfield." I could see papers inside the folder. Legal documents. My stomach tightened, but I kept my face neutral. I had learned over the years how to hide my emotions around these people. "When Jennifer married you 5 years ago," William continued, his voice taking on that patronizing tone I knew so well, "I was skeptical. You came from nothing. Your parents were immigrants who ran a small restaurant. You had no connections, no pedigree, no real prospects." Jennifer started to stand. "Dad, this is inappropriate." "Sit down, Jennifer," William commanded. She hesitated, then slowly lowered herself back into her chair. I could see tears forming in her eyes. "But," William continued, "I believed in second chances. I believed that perhaps, with the right guidance and support, you could become worthy of this family. So I gave you a job at Hartfield Properties. I gave you opportunities." That was his version of history. My version was different. He'd given me the worst assignments, properties in neighborhoods no one wanted, clients who were nightmares, impossible sales quotas. He'd set me up to fail again and again, and somehow, I'd succeeded anyway. "However," William said, and now his voice turned cold, "I've recently discovered some disturbing information about your activities, Marcus. Information that makes it clear you are not, and will never be, a true Hartfield." He pulled a document from the folder and held it up. This is a divorce agreement I've had my lawyers prepare. Very generous terms, actually. Jennifer will retain full custody of any future children. You'll receive a one-time payment of $50,000, and you'll sign away any claim to Hartfield family assets. The room was completely silent. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Dad, what the hell are you doing? Jennifer's voice cracked. Protecting our family, William said simply. He looked at me with cold, satisfied eyes. You see, Marcus, I know about your little side business. The properties you've been buying. The money you've been hiding from my daughter. Christopher leaned forward, unable to contain his glee. We had you investigated, Marcus. Private investigator, forensic accountant, the works. You've been siphoning money, making secret purchases, building your own little empire behind our backs. That's absurd, Jennifer said, but I could hear the question in her voice. She was looking at me now, searching my face. Is it? William pulled out more papers. These are property records showing Marcus has purchased 4 buildings in the past 3 years. Buildings he never told you about, Jennifer. Buildings purchased with money that should have gone into your joint accounts. William walked around the table slowly, playing to his audience. Several of the guests were leaning in, fascinated by the drama. And do you know where these buildings are? William asked. Not in nice neighborhoods. Not in areas with growth potential. These are slum properties. Low-income housing. Section 8 tenants. He said the words like they tasted bad in his mouth. Marcus has been playing slumlord, Christopher added. Taking money that should have supported his wife and child. We don't have children yet, Jennifer interrupted. And using it to exploit poor people, Christopher finished. It's disgusting, really. William placed the divorce papers on the table in front of me. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign these papers tonight. You're going to take your $50,000 and disappear from our lives. You're no longer family, Marcus. You never really were. The room was watching me. 40 sets of eyes, waiting to see the poor immigrant's son crumble under the weight of Hartfield power and money. I looked at Jennifer. Her face was pale, confused, hurt. She didn't know what to believe. I looked at the divorce papers, at William's smug face, at Christopher's barely contained laughter, and then I did something that shocked everyone in that room. I smiled. No, I said quietly. William's eyebrows rose. Excuse me. I said no. I pulled out my phone from my jacket pocket. But I do think it's time for some truth. And I think we need one more person at this table before we continue this conversation. Marcus, what are you doing? Jennifer whispered. I was already dialing. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Daniel, I said, putting the phone on speaker and placing it in the center of the table. I'm at the Hartfield New Year's dinner. I think it's time. Are you sure? Daniel's voice came through clearly, filling the silent dining room. I'm sure. Who the hell is Daniel? William demanded. Give me 5 minutes, Daniel said. I'm downstairs. The phone clicked off. I looked at William. That's Daniel Kawata. He'll be joining us shortly. And when he gets here, we're going to have a very different conversation than the one you planned. Security. William barked. Don't let anyone else in. But it was too late. I heard the front door open, footsteps in the marble foyer, and then Daniel walked into the dining room. Daniel Kawata was a man who understood power. At 58 years old, with silver-streaked black hair and a custom suit that made Williams look cheap, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had nothing to prove. He was Japanese-American, a self-made billionaire who had built his fortune in technology and real estate development. His net worth was estimated at $2.3 billion, about 10 times what William was worth. And he was my business partner. William, Daniel said pleasantly, nodding at my father-in-law. It's been a long time. 20 years, I think. Back when you refused to sell me that property in Manhattan. Said you didn't do business with my kind of people. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I remember that conversation very clearly. William had gone pale. Daniel, I didn't know you were coming. Of course you didn't. Daniel pulled out the chair at the opposite end of the table, the chair that was supposed to be reserved for honored guests, and sat down. Because if you'd known, you never would have tried to humiliate my business partner in front of all these people. The room erupted in confused murmurs. Christopher was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Business partner, Jennifer whispered. I pulled out my own phone and opened a file I'd been keeping. The 4 properties William mentioned. He's right, I did buy them. But what he didn't tell you is why. I handed my phone to Jennifer. She looked at the screen, her eyes widening. 3 years ago, I began, my voice steady now. I went to Daniel with a proposal. I'd been working at Hartfield Properties for 2 years at that point. I'd seen how William operated. He bought properties in poor neighborhoods, did minimal maintenance, charged maximum rents, and squeezed every penny out of people who had no other options. That's called business, William snapped. It's called being a slumlord, I corrected. So I approached Daniel with a different model. What if we bought properties in underserved neighborhoods, actually renovated them properly, charged fair rents, and created communities instead of just collecting checks? Daniel nodded. Marcus showed me a 20-year plan, detailed financial projections, community impact studies. It was one of the most thoughtful proposals I'd seen in years. So I gave him $3 million to start. The room went silent again. $3 million. The 4 properties I bought aren't slums, I continued, looking at William. They are apartment buildings that I've spent the past 3 years renovating. New plumbing, new electrical, new windows, proper heating and cooling. I hired local contractors. I set up after-school programs for the kids. I partnered with job training centers. I pulled up photos on my phone and passed it around the table. Images of smiling families, newly renovated apartments, community spaces. And the money? Christopher demanded. You've been hiding money from Jennifer. I haven't hidden anything, I said. Jennifer knew I was investing in real estate. What I didn't tell her, what I couldn't tell her, was the scale of the investment. Because I knew if I told her, William would find out. And if William found out. You thought I'd interfere, William said, his voice tight. I knew you'd interfere, I corrected. You've spent 5 years trying to break me, William, giving me the worst assignments, setting impossible quotas, mocking me at family dinners. You wanted me to fail, to prove to Jennifer that she'd made a mistake marrying beneath her station. That's not, William started. It's exactly true, Jennifer said quietly. She was looking at her father with an expression I'd never seen before. Disappointment. I've watched you do it, Dad. I kept telling myself I was imagining it, that you were just being tough on him to help him succeed. But I knew. Deep down, I knew. Daniel leaned back in his chair. The properties Marcus bought are now worth approximately $8.2 million. Between the equity and the income they generate, Marcus's personal net worth is somewhere around $4.5 million. The number hung in the air like a bomb. Christopher's mouth literally fell open. $4.5 million. And growing, Daniel added. We're expanding the model. Marcus is now CEO of Chen Development Corporation. We're planning to acquire 15 more properties over the next 2 years, with a goal of creating affordable, high-quality housing for 5,000 families. I looked at William. His face had gone from pale to red. So when you talk about me exploiting poor people, what you really mean is that I'm doing the work you were too greedy to do. I'm proving that you can make money and treat people with dignity at the same time. This is, William sputtered. You went behind my back. You deceived my daughter. I protected my business from a man who has spent 5 years trying to destroy me. I shot back. Every time I succeeded at Hartfield Properties, you moved the goalposts. Every time I brought in a big client, you found a reason to reduce my commission. You weren't mentoring me, William. You were hazing me, and I got tired of it. Jennifer stood up. She walked around the table and stood next to me, taking my hand. Why didn't you tell me? I looked at my wife, the woman I loved more than anything, because I needed you to see who your father really was. Not the man he pretended to be, but the man he actually is. If I told you about the business, you would have told him, and he would have found a way to sabotage it. But more than that, I paused, choosing my words carefully. I needed you to see what he was willing to do. I knew that eventually, he'd make a move like this. He'd try to force us apart, to prove that I was never good enough. And I needed you to see him do it, so you'd finally believe me when I told you how he really felt." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. She turned to her father. "Is that true, Dad? Were you really trying to break up my marriage?" William's jaw tightened. "I was trying to protect you from a mistake." "A mistake?" Jennifer's voice rose. "I've been married to Marcus for 5 years. 5 years of him supporting me, loving me, building a life with me. And the whole time, you've been sabotaging him, making him feel like he's not good enough." "He's not," William started. "He's worth $4.5 million. Jennifer shouted. "He's built a successful company. He's helping thousands of people. What exactly does he need to do to prove himself to you?" The answer, of course, was nothing, because it was never about what I did or didn't do. It was about who I was, the son of immigrants, the man without a pedigree, the outsider who had dared to marry into the Hartfield family. Daniel stood up. "I think we're done here, William. Marcus and I have a meeting tomorrow morning to finalize the financing on our next acquisition. You're welcome to join us if you'd like to see how real development works." He turned to me. "Marcus, Jennifer, why don't you two head home? I'll stay and chat with William about his attempted interference in Chen Development Corporation. I have some thoughts about what happens to people who try to sabotage my business partners." The threat was subtle but clear. Daniel Kawata had the resources and connections to make William's life very difficult if he chose to. I picked up the divorce papers from the table. For a moment, I considered tearing them up dramatically, but that felt too theatrical. Instead, I just handed them back to William. "I'm not signing these," I said simply. "I'm not leaving Jennifer. I'm not leaving this family, even though it's clear this family never wanted me. But I am done pretending to be less than I am to make you comfortable." I looked around the table at all the guests who had watched this drama unfold. "My name is Marcus Chen. My parents immigrated from China with nothing. They worked 16-hour days at their restaurant to give me opportunities. They taught me that wealth means nothing if you don't use it to help others. They taught me that character matters more than pedigree." I turned back to William. "You tried to humiliate me tonight. You tried to prove I was a fraud, a criminal, someone exploiting the poor. Instead, you've shown everyone here exactly who you are. A man so desperate to maintain his sense of superiority that he'd destroy his own daughter's happiness." Jennifer and I walked toward the door. Behind us, I could hear the murmurs starting. The guests were talking, processing what they'd just witnessed. "Marcus," William called out. His voice sounded different, smaller. I turned back. "That folder," he said, gesturing to the leather folders still on the table. "There was other information in there. Things you need to know." "What things?" Jennifer asked. William looked at Christopher, who suddenly looked very uncomfortable. "Tell them," Daniel said. He had clearly stayed behind for exactly this reason. "Tell them what else you found when you had Marcus investigated." Christopher shifted in his seat. "It's nothing, really." "Tell them," Daniel repeated, his voice sharp. Christopher sighed. "The investigator found that some of Dad's properties, the ones he's been managing for the past decade, they are in violation of about 200 housing codes. Faulty wiring, lead paint, mold issues that have been covered up instead of fixed." My blood went cold. People are living in those conditions. "It's all being handled," William said quickly. "We're working on bringing everything up to code." "When?" Daniel asked. "Because from what Christopher just described, you've been aware of these violations for years." The room had gone silent again. The other guests were looking at William with new eyes. Some of them were recording on their phones. "Marcus's properties," Daniel continued, "are all above code. Inspected regularly. Safe, clean, well-maintained. But William's properties, the ones he's been running while claiming Marcus was the exploitative one, those are the real slums." I felt sick. How many people, William, how many families have been living in dangerous conditions while you collected rent? He didn't answer. Jennifer pulled her hand from mine and walked back to the table. She picked up the leather folder and started reading through the documents. Her face went from confusion to horror to fury in the space of 30 seconds. 200 violations, she read aloud. Multiple complaints to the housing authority. 3 lawsuits settled quietly. payoffs to inspectors to delay reporting. She looked at her father with an expression I'd never seen before. Pure disgust. "You are going to accuse Marcus of being a slumlord," she said slowly, "when you're the one putting people in danger? You are going to destroy my marriage to hide your own crimes." "They are not crimes," William protested. "They are business decisions. Sometimes you have to prioritize. Profits over people," I finished. "That's what you were going to say, wasn't it? That sometimes you have to prioritize profits over people's safety. Over children living with lead paint. Over families breathing mold. Let me back up and tell you how I got to this moment. How a poor kid from Queens ended up standing in a mansion, facing down a real estate mogul, with a billionaire backing me up. Because the story didn't start at this New Year's dinner. It started 5 years earlier, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon when I was delivering takeout orders for my parents' restaurant. I was 29 years old, working 60-hour weeks between the restaurant and my night classes in real estate management. My parents, Lin and Wei Chen, had immigrated from Guangzhou when I was 2 years old. They'd opened Golden Dragon Restaurant in Flushing, Queens, serving authentic Cantonese food to a neighborhood that was mostly immigrants like them. My father was a chef, not just a cook, a real chef who had trained in Hong Kong's finest kitchens. But in America, his credentials meant nothing. So he'd worked in other people's restaurants for 15 years, saving every penny, until he could finally open his own place. Golden Dragon wasn't fancy. 40 seats, fluorescent lighting, laminate tables. But the food was incredible, and Dad had built a loyal customer base. Mom ran the front of house, greeting every customer by name, remembering their favorite dishes. They worked 7 days a week. They never took vacations. Every dollar they made went into my education or back into the restaurant. And they were proud of it. Proud of building something from nothing. Proud of giving me opportunities they never had. On that rainy Tuesday, I was delivering an order to a high-rise apartment building in Manhattan. The elevator was broken, so I had to walk up 8 flights of stairs with bags of hot food. I was sweaty, tired, and running late for my class. I knocked on the door. A woman answered. She was about my age, beautiful, with blonde hair and striking green eyes. She was wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater, and she looked like she'd been crying. "Food delivery," I said, trying to catch my breath. She stayed at the bags, then at me, then burst into tears. "Hey," I said, immediately concerned. "Are you okay? Is something wrong with the order?" "No," she sobbed. "The order's fine. I'm sorry. Bad day." I should have just handed her the food and left. I had a class to get to. But something about the way she was crying, like her whole world was falling apart, made me hesitate. "Do you want to talk about it?" I asked. She looked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. "You're a delivery guy." "I'm also a human being," I said. "And you look like you could use someone to talk to." That was how I met Jennifer Hartfield. Over the next hour, sitting in her apartment hallway, she didn't invite me in, and I didn't expect her to. She told me about her life. About her controlling father who was pressuring her to marry a man she didn't love. About her mother who had passed away 2 years earlier. About feeling trapped in a gilded cage where everything was decided for her. I told her about my parents. About working at the restaurant. About my dreams of building something meaningful in real estate. About wanting to prove that immigrants' kids could succeed without losing who they were. We talked until my phone rang with another delivery order. I handed her the food, which was definitely cold by then, and she insisted on paying me double. For the therapy session, she said, managing a small smile. "Keep your money," I said. "But if you want to continue this conversation, maybe over coffee that's not being delivered in plastic containers, here's my number." She looked at the business card I'd scribbled my number on. Golden Dragon Restaurant. "You're Marcus Chen." "Guilty." "I'm Jennifer," she said. "And yes, I'd like to continue this conversation." 3 months later, we were dating. 6 months after that, I met William Hartfield for the first time. It was a disaster. William had summoned me to his office in Midtown. Not to his home, to his office. The message was clear. This was a business meeting, not a social one. His office was on the 42nd floor of a building he owned. floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Original artwork on the walls. I later learned it was worth millions. A desk that looked like it cost more than my parents' annual income. William sat behind that desk, looking at me the way an entomologist might examine an interesting but ultimately insignificant insect. "Mr. Chen," he said, not offering to shake hands. "Jennifer tells me you're studying real estate management." "Yes, sir. Night classes at NYU. While working at your parents' restaurant." "That's right. And you think this qualifies you to date my daughter?" I'd known this was coming, but it still felt like a slap. "With respect, sir, I'm not trying to qualify for anything. I care about Jennifer. She cares about me. That's what matters." "What matters," William said coldly, "is that my daughter is a Hartfield. We have certain expectations, certain standards. I understand that. Do you?" He leaned forward. "Jennifer will inherit a significant portion of my estate. When I die, she'll be worth over $100 million. Do you really think I'm going to let some restaurant worker's son anywhere near that money?" The mask was off. The polite pretense was gone. This was the real William Hartfield. "I'm not after her money," I said. "Everyone's after something, Mr. Chen. In my experience, people like you are after one of two things, money or status. Either way, you're wasting my daughter's time. People like me. People from nothing. People with no connections, no breeding, no real value to offer." I should have walked out. I should have told him where to shove his elitist attitude. But I was young and stupid and in love, and I thought I could prove him wrong. "Give me a chance," I said. "Let me show you what I can do." William smiled, and it was the coldest smile I'd ever seen. "All right, Mr. Chen. I'll give you a chance. Come work for me at Hartfield Properties. If you can succeed in my world, maybe I'll reconsider my opinion of you." It was a trap, of course. I just didn't know it yet. I started working at Hartfield Properties the following month. William assigned me to the worst territories, neighborhoods where other salespeople had failed for years. He gave me impossible quotas: sell 15 units in the first quarter when the average was 8. He constantly criticized my work, my appearance, my accent, even though I'd been born in America and had no accent. But here's the thing. I succeeded anyway. I sold 16 units that first quarter, 21 the next. I learned the neighborhoods I was assigned. I built relationships with local communities. I understood that these weren't just properties. They were people's homes, their futures. And that's when I started to see what William really was. I'd go to inspect a property, and I'd find serious violations. Broken heating systems in the middle of winter. Electrical problems that were fire hazards. Landlords, William's employees, who collected rent but did minimal maintenance. When I reported these issues, William would tell me to handle it quietly. Code 4. Do the bare minimum. Don't make waves. Definitely don't spend money fixing things properly. I started keeping records, taking photos, documenting violations. Not because I planned to do anything with them. Not yet. But because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. William Hartfield, the man who donated to charity galas and sat on prestigious boards, was running slum properties and putting families in danger. Jennifer didn't know. How could she? She'd grown up in mansions and private schools. She'd never seen the properties her father actually owned. She only saw the glossy corporate reports and the charity events. When I tried to tell her, gently, that her father's business practices weren't as ethical as she thought, she defended him. "He's tough but fair," she'd say. "He's built something from nothing, just like your parents." But it wasn't the same. My parents had built something by working harder than anyone else. William had built something by exploiting people who had no other choices. That's when I met Daniel Kawata. It happened at a real estate development conference. I'd gone because William insisted all his employees attend. But he put me in the cheapest hotel, giving me a name tag that said junior associate even though I was bringing in more sales than half the senior people. Daniel was the keynote speaker. He talked about sustainable development, about building communities instead of just buildings, about the responsibility that comes with wealth and power. After his speech, I approached him. I had no idea who he was. I mean, I knew he was important, but I didn't know he was billionaire important. I just knew he was saying things I believed. Mr. Kawata, I said, I really appreciated your speech. I'm Marcus Chen. I work in real estate, and I've been thinking about a different model for affordable housing development. Most successful people would have brushed me off. Daniel didn't. He looked at me, really looked at me, and said, tell me more. We talked for 3 hours. I showed him the documentation I'd been keeping, the photos of violations, the financial models I'd been working on in my spare time, showing how you could renovate properties properly, charge fair rents, and still make a reasonable profit. This is good work, Daniel said finally. Who are you working for? Hartfield Properties. His expression changed. William Hartfield. You know him. We've met. His tone suggested the meeting hadn't gone well. Does he know you're developing these alternative models? No. He'd shut me down immediately. Daniel nodded slowly. If you were to leave Hartfield Properties, if you were to start your own development company with significant backing, would you be interested? My heart raced. Absolutely. Then let's have a more detailed conversation. But Marcus, if we do this, it needs to be confidential. At least initially. William Hartfield is not a man who likes to be shown up. If he knows we're competing with him, he'll try to destroy you before you even get started. That was 3 years ago. Since then, I'd been living a double life. By day, I worked at Hartfield Properties, still dealing with William's impossible demands and constant criticism. By night and on weekends, I was building Chin Development Corporation with Daniel's backing. The 4 properties I'd bought weren't just investments. They were proof of concept. Each one had been a run-down building in a struggling neighborhood. Each one we'd renovated completely, bringing it up to code and beyond. Each one now housed families who were paying fair rents and living in safe, clean conditions. And each one was making money. Not huge profits. We weren't trying to maximize every dollar, but steady, sustainable returns. Jennifer knew I was investing in real estate. I hadn't lied to her, but I hadn't told her the full scope because I knew she'd tell her father, and I knew he'd interfere. I felt guilty about that. I felt guilty about keeping secret from my wife. But I also knew that this was the only way to protect what we were building. And I knew that eventually, William would make a move that would force everything into the open. I just hadn't expected him to try to end my marriage to do it. Now, standing in that dining room on New Year's Eve, watching my wife read through the evidence of her father's hypocrisy and crimes, I realized that everything had led to this moment. Jennifer, I said softly. She looked up from the folder. Tears were streaming down her face, but they weren't tears of confusion anymore. They were tears of anger. He was going to divorce us, she said, her voice shaking. He was going to pay you off and take me away from you, all while his own properties are putting children in danger. Yes. And you knew. You knew he'd do something like this. I suspected. I hoped I was wrong. She walked back to me and took both my hands in hers. I'm so sorry. You have nothing to be sorry for. I do, she insisted. I should have seen it. I should have believed you when you tried to tell me. I should have stood up to him years ago. You're standing up to him now, I said. That's what matters. She turned back to the table, to her father, who was now looking small and cornered, to her brother, who'd been complicit in all of this, to the guests who were still recording everything on their phones. I want a divorce, Jennifer said. For a second, I thought she was talking to me, and my heart stopped. But then I realized she was looking at her father. Not from Marcus, she clarified. From you, Dad. From this family. From everything you represent. Jennifer, be reasonable, William started. I'm done being reasonable, she shouted. I'm done making excuses for you. I'm done pretending that your money and status make up for the fact that you're a terrible person who exploits people and tried to destroy my marriage. She grabbed my hand. Marcus and I are leaving. We're not coming back for Sunday dinners. We're not coming back for holidays. We're not taking your money or your approval or anything else from you. If you walk out that door, William said, his voice dangerous, you're out of the will. You get nothing. Jennifer laughed. It was a bitter, broken sound. You're assuming I want something. But I don't. I have Marcus. I have a husband who's built something meaningful and good. I have a man who treats people with dignity and doesn't need to put others down to feel powerful. She looked at me, and her eyes were clear now. Certain. And apparently, I have a husband who's worth $4.5 million and never once made me feel like money was what mattered. We walked toward the door again. This time, no one called us back. But Daniel did follow us out. In the marble foyer, away from the dining room, he pulled me aside. That was brave, he said. But you know this isn't over. William will retaliate. Men like him always do. I know. He'll try to sabotage your business. He'll use his connections to make things difficult for you. Let him try, I said. We have better lawyers, better financing, and, most importantly, we're not breaking any laws. Every property we own is completely above board. Daniel smiled. That's true, which is why I had my legal team prepare something. He handed me a thick envelope. Inside were legal documents, lawsuits, cease and desist orders, reports to housing authorities. Everything you need to take William Hartfield down, Daniel explained. All the housing violations documented. All the evidence of bribery and code manipulation. If he tries to hurt you or your business, you file these. And I guarantee, by the time the lawsuits and investigations are done, Hartfield properties will be worth significantly less than it is today. I looked at the documents. At the power to destroy my father-in-law's empire. I don't want revenge, I said slowly. I just want to be left alone to do good work. I know, Daniel said. But sometimes, the threat of consequences is the only thing that keeps powerful men in check. Keep these. Hope you never need them. But if you do... Thank you, I said, meaning it. Jennifer and I drove home in silence. We lived in a modest apartment in Brooklyn. Modest by Hartfield standards, anyway. 2 bedrooms, a nice kitchen, close to the subway. Jennifer had wanted to stay here instead of moving to one of her father's properties. At the time, I'd thought it was sweet. Now I realized she'd probably known, on some level, that her father's properties weren't as nice as he claimed. In our living room, Jennifer finally broke down. She curled up on the couch and sobbed. Huge, body-shaking sobs that came from somewhere deep inside. I held her. I didn't try to fix it or explain it away. I just held her while she grieved for the father she'd thought she had and mourned the discovery of who he really was. I feel so stupid, she said finally, her voice hoarse. How did I not see it? How did I not know what kind of man he was? Because he's your father, I said. We want to believe the best of our parents. That's not stupid. That's human. You saw it. You tried to tell me. I had the advantage of being an outsider. You grew up in that world. It's hard to see the problems with something when it's all you've ever known. She pulled back and looked at me with red, swollen eyes. $4.5 million. I managed a small smile. Give or take. And you never told me. I wanted to. Every day, I wanted to. But you knew I'd tell my dad, she finished. And he'd find a way to sabotage it. Yes. She was quiet for a long moment. That must have been lonely. Building something so important and not being able to share it with me. It was, I admitted. But I kept reminding myself while I was doing it. Not just to prove your father wrong, but to build something that mattered. Something that would help people. Like your parents, she said softly. Like my parents, I agreed. Jennifer stood up and walked to the window. Our apartment had a view of the Brooklyn Bridge, lit up against the night sky. It was almost midnight, almost New Year's Day. I need to call them, she said. Who? Your parents. I need to apologize to them. For what? For every time my family made them feel like they weren't good enough. For every snide comment about their restaurant. For every time my father implied that immigrants were somehow less than people like us. Her voice cracked again. Your parents built something beautiful, Marcus. They raised an incredible son, and my family treated them like they were nothing. I joined her at the window. They never held it against you. They love you, Jennifer. They see who you really are. I want to work at the restaurant, she said suddenly. I blinked. What? Your parents' restaurant. I want to work there. Not as some charity thing or photo opportunity. I want to actually work. Learn how to cook. Learn how to run a real business. One that helps people instead of exploiting them. Jennifer, you don't have to. I want to, she insisted. I've spent my whole life being a Hartfield, living off money I didn't earn, money that came from hurting people. I want to do something real. I want to build something with my own hands. I pulled her into a hug. Okay, but you should know, my mom's going to work you hard. She doesn't believe in special treatment. Jennifer laughed, a real laugh this time. Good. I could use some tough love from someone who actually cares about me. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Daniel, just left the Hartfield mansion. William and Christopher are having a very bad evening. The other guests were not impressed by the housing violations. Several of them are on non-profit boards that work with low-income housing. Word is going to spread. Happy New Year, Marcus. You did good. I showed the text to Jennifer. She read it and nodded slowly. Good, she said. He deserves it. We stood together at the window and watched the fireworks start over the bridge. Somewhere in the city, people were celebrating, counting down to a new year, a fresh start. What happens now? Jennifer asked. Now, I said, we build. We expand Chen Development Corporation. We create more affordable housing. We hire more people from the communities we're working in. We prove that business can be a force for good. And my father. I thought about the envelope Daniel had given me. The power to destroy William Hartfield's empire. We leave him alone, I said. Unless he comes after us. Then we defend ourselves. But we don't seek revenge. We're better than that. Jennifer nodded. Better than that, she repeated. I like the sound of that. My phone rang. It was my mother. Marcus, she said in Cantonese when I answered. You didn't come to the restaurant for New Year's. Your father and I were worried. I'm sorry, Ma. There was family drama with Jennifer's father. My mother was more perceptive than people gave her credit for. Yes. Is Jennifer okay? She's going to be. But Ma, I need to tell you something. About my business. About what I've been building. I spent the next 30 minutes explaining everything to my parents. The partnership with Daniel. The properties we'd renovated. The $4.5 million. The confrontation at the Hartfield mansion. My mother was quiet for a long time after I finished. Then she said, Your father wants to talk to you. My dad got on the phone. Marcus, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You did this. You built this. Yes, B.A. And you did it by helping people, by treating them with dignity. I tried to. I tried to do it the way you and Ma taught me. I heard my father crying. In 34 years, I'd never heard my father cry. Not when they'd lost their first restaurant to a fire. Not when I told them I was dropping out of my master's program to work full-time at Hartfield Properties. Not even at my wedding. B.A. I said, concerned. Are you okay? I'm proud, he said simply. Your mother and I, we came to this country with nothing. We worked so hard to give you opportunities. But we always worried. Did we give you the right values? Did we teach you what really matters? You did, I said, my own voice breaking. Everything I am, everything I've built, it's because of you and Ma. No, my father said firmly. You took what we gave you and made it into something bigger. Something better. You are better than us, Marcus. And that's all a parent can hope for. We talked for another hour. I told them about Jennifer wanting to work at the restaurant. My mother was thrilled. My father started planning what dishes he'd teach her first. When I hung up, Jennifer was watching me with a soft smile. They are proud of you, she said. They are proud of us, I corrected. You're part of this family now. The real family. The one that matters. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most were from Christopher, begging me to talk to their father, to work something out. A few were from Hartfield Properties employees, congratulating me on standing up to the old man. But one was from William himself. Just 3 words, we need to talk. I showed it to Jennifer. She frowned. Are you going to meet with him? I don't know. What do you think? I think. She paused, considering. I think maybe you should. Not because he deserves it, but because you deserve closure. You deserve to look him in the eye and tell him exactly what you think of him, without worrying about protecting me or your job. So that afternoon, I met William Hartfield at a coffee shop in Manhattan. Neutral territory. Public, so he couldn't make a scene. He looked terrible. He'd aged 10 years overnight. His eyes were bloodshot. His expensive suit was rumpled. "Marcus," he said when I sat down. "Thank you for coming." "I'm here," I said. "What do you want?" He took a sip of his coffee. His hand was shaking slightly. "I made a mistake last night." "You made several mistakes." "Yes," he agreed. I was angry. I was scared. When I found out about your business, about Daniel Kawata backing you, I felt threatened. Threatened by your son-in-law succeeding. Threatened by being shown up, he corrected. My whole life, I've been the smartest person in the room, the most successful, the one everyone else had to impress. And then you, someone I'd dismissed as insignificant, you built something I couldn't. You partnered with someone I'd insulted decades ago. You made me look small. "This isn't about you," I said. "It never was. I didn't build Chen Development Corporation to show you up. I built it because I saw suffering that you were causing, and I wanted to fix it." William flinched. "The housing violations." "Yes. I didn't know about all of them," he said. "Some of them, yes. I knew the properties weren't perfect, but I didn't realize how bad things had gotten. Didn't realize or didn't want to realize." He was quiet for a long moment. "Both, probably. It's easy to not see problems when acknowledging them would be expensive. Expensive in money or in ego." "Both," he admitted again. I studied him. He looked genuinely shaken. But I'd also seen him lie smoothly to investors, to tenants, to his own family. "Why am I here, William? What do you actually want?" "I want to fix it," he said. "The violations. The properties. I want to bring everything up to code. Properly. No more payoffs, no more shortcuts. That's going to cost millions." "I know, but I have millions, and I'd rather spend them fixing my mistakes than fighting lawsuits from Daniel Kawata's lawyers." So he'd heard about the envelope. "Good. And Jennifer?" I asked. "I want my daughter back," he said, and for the first time, I heard real pain in his voice. "I want her to not look at me with disgust. I want a chance to be better. That's not up to me." "I know, but you have influence with her. If you tell her I'm genuine, she'll listen." I leaned back in my chair. "I'm not going to do that." "Marcus." "No," I said firmly. "You don't get to use me as an intermediary to manipulate your daughter. If you want Jennifer back in your life, you have to earn it. From her. Directly. By actually changing, not just by saying the right words." "How do I do that?" "Start by fixing the housing violations. All of them. Don't do it because you're scared of lawsuits. Do it because it's the right thing to do. Because people are living in those buildings, and they deserve safe homes." "Okay. Then, donate to organizations that help the communities you've hurt. Not for tax write-offs. Not for publicity. Do it anonymously and do it generously." "Okay. And then," I said, leaning forward, "then you wait. You give Jennifer space. You let her decide if and when she wants to talk to you again. You don't pressure her. You don't use Christopher or other family members to guilt her. You respect her decision, even if that decision is to cut you out of her life permanently." William looked like I'd punched him. "She might never forgive me." "She might not," I agreed. "That's the consequence of your actions. You don't get to force forgiveness or buy it. You can only work to deserve it and hope it's eventually offered." He nodded slowly. "You really do love her, don't you? This isn't about her money or her status." "I never cared about her money or her status," I said. "I fell in love with a woman crying in a hallway because she felt trapped. A woman who was kind and funny and smart, but who'd been told her whole life that her value came from her last name. I loved the person she was underneath all the heart-filled expectations." "I'm sorry," William said. "I'm sorry I tried to take that away from both of you. Apologize to Jennifer, not to me." "I will, when she's ready to hear it." I stood up to leave, but at the door, I turned back. "William." "Yes. For what it's worth, I think you can change. I've seen people do it, but it's going to require you to actually look at the harm you've caused. Not just acknowledge it intellectually, but really sit with it. Really understand what it means that families were living in dangerous conditions while you profited." "That sounds uncomfortable." "It should be," I said. "Comfort is what got you here in the first place." 6 months later, Jennifer and I were standing in the lobby of our newest property, a renovated apartment building in the South Bronx. It had taken 8 months of work, but would transform a condemned building into 50 units of affordable, safe, beautiful housing. Today was the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Local politicians were the community leaders, families who would be moving in. And, surprisingly, William and Christopher Hartfield. They'd shown up unannounced an hour before the ceremony. Jennifer had stiffened when she saw them, but she hadn't asked them to leave. "We just wanted to see what you've built," William said quietly. "And to give you this." He handed Jennifer an envelope. Inside was a check for $5 million, made out to Chen Development Corporation. "What is this?" Jennifer asked. "It's from selling one of my properties," William explained. "One of the ones with the most violations. I fixed everything, brought it completely up to code, and then sold it. I wanted the money to go somewhere it would actually help people." "Dad," Jennifer started. "I don't expect forgiveness," William interrupted. "I don't expect you to want a relationship with me. But I'm trying, Jennifer. I'm really trying to be better." Jennifer looked at me. I could see the question in her eyes. "It's your decision," I said quietly. "Whatever you decide, I support you." She looked back at her father, at the man who tried to destroy her marriage and built his fortune exploiting people, but also at a man who was, apparently, trying to change. "Keep the check," she said finally, "but give it to Marcus. This is his company, his vision. If you want to support it, you support him directly." William nodded. He held out the check to me. I took it. "This money will house 30 more families," I said. "Thank you." "Thank you," William replied, "for showing me there was a better way." The ceremony was beautiful. Kids ran around the new playground we'd installed. Families toured their new apartments, exclaiming over the modern kitchens and safe, working heating systems. Community leaders gave speeches about hope and investment and dignity. During my own speech, I looked out at the crowd. I saw my parents holding hands and beaming with pride. I saw Daniel, who'd taken a chance on a kid with a dream and a plan. I saw Jennifer, who'd chosen love over money and truth over comfort. And I saw William, standing at the back of the crowd, watching his daughter with an expression of profound regret and perhaps, maybe, the beginning of understanding. "This building represents more than just affordable housing," I said into the microphone. "It represents what's possible when we choose to value people over profits. When we recognize that everyone, regardless of their income or background, deserves a safe, dignified place to live." I looked at Jennifer. I learned that from my parents, who came to this country with nothing and built something through hard work and treating people with respect. But I also learned it from my wife, who had the courage to walk away from wealth and privilege when she realized it was built on exploitation. The crowd applauded. Jennifer was crying, but they were happy tears this time. After the ceremony, as people mingled and enjoyed the catered food from my parents' restaurant, of course, Christopher approached me. "Can we talk?" he asked. We stepped away from the crowd. Christopher looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "I want to apologize," he said, "for everything. For going along with Dad's plan. For hiring that investigator. For being excited about humiliating you." "Why were you excited?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Because I was jealous," he admitted. "You married my sister, worked at my father's company, and you were succeeding. You were making me look bad by comparison. Instead of working harder or being better, I tried to tear you down." "That's surprisingly honest." "I'm trying to learn from Dad's mistakes," Christopher said. "And one of those mistakes was never admitting when he was wrong. So, I'm admitting it. I was wrong. You're a better man than I gave you credit for." "Thank you," I said. "That means something. Are you hiring?" Christopher asked suddenly. I blinked. "What?" "At Chen Development Corporation. Are you hiring? Because I'd like to work for you. Learn how to do development the right way. I have experience in real estate, but I've only ever learned Dad's way. I'd like to learn yours." I studied him. Christopher had always been arrogant, entitled, dismissive of people he considered beneath him. But he looked sincere now, humbled. "We're always looking for good people," I said slowly. "But it's hard work. long hours, and we pay ourselves fair salaries, not excessive ones. You'd be making a fraction of what you made at Hartfield Properties. I don't care about the money, Christopher said. I have a trust fund. I don't need the salary. I need to do something meaningful. I need to stop being the person I was. Talk to Jennifer, I said. If she's comfortable with it, we can talk about a trial position. Over the next year, Chen Development Corporation grew rapidly. We acquired 12 more properties. We employed over 200 people, contractors, property managers, community organizers. Every building we renovated became a model for sustainable, ethical development. William Hartfield kept his distance from Jennifer, respecting her need for space. But he did fix all the violations in his properties. He did donate, anonymously, millions to housing advocacy organizations. And slowly, very slowly, he began to change his business practices. Christopher, surprisingly, turned out to be a decent employee. He worked hard, didn't complain, and actually listened when community members told him what they needed. He'd probably never be great at the job. He'd been raised with too much privilege to fully understand struggle, but he was trying. As for Jennifer and me, we were stronger than ever. She worked 3 days a week at Golden Dragon Restaurant, learning authentic Cantonese cooking from my mother. The other days, she managed community outreach for Chen Development Corporation, organizing after-school programs and job training initiatives. We were happy, not because we had money, though the financial security was nice. Not because we defeated the villain, though there was satisfaction in proving William wrong. We were happy because we were building something meaningful together. 2 years after that New Year's Eve dinner, Jennifer and I hosted our own New Year's party. Not at a mansion, in the community room of one of our renovated buildings. We invited residents, employees, community partners. My parents cooked. Daniel flew in from Tokyo. Even William and Christopher came, though they stayed at the edges of the party, still working to earn back trust. At midnight, as fireworks exploded over the city, Jennifer pulled me onto the small balcony. 2 years ago, she said, I was sitting in my father's dining room, watching him try to destroy our marriage. That was a rough night, I agreed. But it was also the night I finally saw clearly. The night I stopped making excuses. The night I chose you over everything else. Best decision you ever made, I teased. Second best, she corrected. She took my hand and placed it on her stomach. The best decision is the one we made 3 months ago. It took me a second. Then it hit me. Yo? I'm pregnant, she confirmed, laughing at my shocked expression. 12 weeks. I wanted to wait until after the first trimester to tell you. I pulled her into a hug, then pulled back, worried I'd squeezed too hard. Are you okay? Is the baby okay? Do you need to sit down? I'm fine, she laughed. The baby's fine. But Marcus, I want them to grow up knowing their grandparents. All of them. She looked through the glass doors at the party inside. At my parents, laughing with residents. At William, standing alone near the buffet, looking older and sadder. I think I'm ready, Jennifer said, to talk to my dad, to let him be part of our lives again. Not like before. I'll never forget what he did. But maybe he's earned a second chance. Are you sure? I asked. I'm sure, she said. Because you taught me something, Marcus. You taught me that people can change if they choose to. Your father-in-law chose to change. Christopher chose to change. Even I chose to change. From someone who accepted injustice because it was comfortable to someone who fights against it. She took my hand. And I want our child to grow up in a world where change is possible. Where mistakes don't define you forever. Where you can always choose to be better. We went back inside. Jennifer walked over to her father. I watched from across the room as she said something to him. William's face crumpled. He started to cry. Jennifer hugged him, tentatively at first, then tighter. It would take time. Trust, once broken, doesn't heal overnight. William would have to keep proving himself. Christopher would have to keep working to overcome his past attitudes. Jennifer and I would have to keep building, keep fighting for what we believed in. But as I stood in that community room, surrounded by people from every walk of life, immigrants and Americans, rich and poor, young and old, I felt something I'd been searching for my whole life. I felt like I belonged. Not because of money or status or the right last name, but because I built something worth belonging to. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Congratulations on the pregnancy. Jennifer just told me. Here's a gift for my future godchild. Attached was a contract. Daniel was investing another $50 million in Chen Development Corporation. I laughed and showed the text to Jennifer. His impossible, she said, but she was smiling. His family, I corrected. The family we chose. And that, I realized, was a real victory. Not defeating William Hartfield. Not building a successful business. Not even proving that the poor immigrant's son could succeed. The real victory was creating a family. A chosen family of people who shared our values. Who believed in treating people with dignity. Who understood that wealth meant nothing if you didn't use it to help others. As the party continued around us, Jennifer and I stood together, her hand on her stomach, planning for a future that would be very different from the one her father had imagined for her. A future built not on exploitation, but on equity. Not on status, but on service. Not on what you could take from others, but on what you could give. And somewhere in Queens, in a small restaurant with fluorescent lights and laminate tables, my parents were still serving authentic Cantonese food to their loyal customers. Still working hard. Still proud of what they'd built. They'd come to America with nothing and given me everything. Now it was my turn to pass that legacy forward. To my child. To the families in our buildings. To everyone who'd been told they weren't good enough, weren't wealthy enough, weren't connected enough to succeed. I was living proof that they were wrong. That character mattered more than pedigree. That kindness was more valuable than cruelty. That the real measure of wealth wasn't what you accumulated but what you gave away. William Hartfield had tried to prove I wasn't family. Instead, he'd helped me discover what family really meant. And that lesson was worth more than all the money in the world. Moral of the story. True wealth isn't measured by your bank account or your family name. It's measured by the lives you improve, the dignity you restore, and the example you set for the next generation. Those who judge others by superficial markers of success often miss the profound character that lies beneath. Never underestimate someone who comes from nothing. They understand the value of everything. And always remember, family isn't just who you're born to. Family is who stands with you when the truth comes out, who shares your values, and who chooses to build something meaningful alongside you. The greatest victory isn't proving others wrong. It's becoming someone your youngest self would be proud of.